Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and I'm going to make another video. This is going to be another video similar to the top lane one that I did, but this is going to be for the jungle. So, I go back and forth on what I think I should do in these kinds of video, and I kind of just play it by ear. But for this video, I think that if I'm being honest with myself, I think that there is one jungler who is just better than all the other junglers and should really serve as the standard when we're kind of thinking about other junglers that are in this competition and how we should view them. So we're going to start off with Canyon. So people who have been following me and listening to what I think for like a betting perspective, you would know that I was reluctant to give Canyon a lot of credit for Damwon's success last year because I knew that they had Showmaker, and Showmaker is so impactful and is such a good player that it's tough. Like I said in one of my other videos yesterday, it's tough to know how much credit every different player should get. But I think that Showmaker's willingness to play around Canyon should give us reason to think that Canyon is an exceptionally good player who is able to carry games in a variety of ways. And that's really the most impressive thing that we've seen from Canyon in Worlds. So we've seen them play carry champions and not carry champions, and that's probably that's a great benefit for Damwon. Their flexibility in drafts, their ability to play to their opponents' team compositions and try to create advantages in a variety of ways. It's very difficult to prepare against Damwon because right when you take something away, they can take the best jungler or the best mid laner or one of the best mid laners in the world and just pivot them completely into a different style of champion. So you're wasting bans, you're just wasting a lot of draft resources because it's tough to pin them down into a specific type of draft. So the three carry champions were Talon, Xin, and Qiyana. So these are three champions that are meta, are very strong, and it's obvious why Canyon would play that. And it's somewhat predictable. They're in line with their playstyle as a carry jungler. But then we also have Trundle, Poppy, and Lee Sin. So I don't consider Lee Sin a true carry champion because he can't farm up the same way that the hard farmers can. And while he does have insane playmaking ability, he's not really asked. Maybe Xin shouldn't be in this list, but you can hard carry a game as Xin Zhao. You can be like a target for buffs and just have them like pumping out a ridiculous amount of damage, having the engage, having the ultimate. There's like a lot of. It's probably just a better carry champion overall. Like Qiyana, the playmaking ability on Qiyana is just kind of out of control at this point, and I think that a lot of teams are going to have to hopefully ban it out. Like the fact that Damwon is up against Mad Lions in the first round, we'll see some interesting stuff in the jungle. Not because I think that Elyoya is on the same level as Canyon, but because they play similar champions, and that could be a way that Mad Lions is able to fight their way back into this matchup is, if Damwon is constantly changing what kind of team composition they're going after. Like after the first game, second game, we're going to have somewhat of an idea of what the series meta could potentially look like. But if Damwon is like, we'll just give Elyoya whoever he wants, we'll give Showmaker TF, and we'll just build a team composition to combat that. Like theoretically, they could lose game one, and then they have to start thinking to themselves, okay, do we do it again in game two? If our game plan is sound and we were just on the wrong side of variance, run back the same draft, prove to them that we can beat it pretty easily, then maybe they pivot and we put them in a bad spot. But I'd be afraid of that first game because I could see Damwon like not outsmarting themselves, but drafting in such a way that almost shows Mad Lions too much respect. Because in my opinion, I think that the team with the more talent, the better team overall, is the one that should dictate how these drafts go. And they're just putting a lot more stress on the draft generally. But okay, so that's enough of that. So let's go through some of these champions, and like Canyon can play all these champions, so it doesn't really matter. But we don't want Canyon on certain champions. We want Canyon to be in a spot to carry these games, in my opinion. Like there are different ways to create a winning advantage for your team, and Canyon is always going to be an integral part for that for Damwon. Sometimes they'll be the carry, sometimes they'll be in more of a supportive role. So Lee Sin is just a great playmaking champion. All of the professional junglers are relatively good at Lee Sin because like for the past 5 years, Lee Sin has been a playable jungler, and everyone has like the mechanics. They know how to do the insect and how to ward hop and how to like get additional value out of Lee Sin's kit. And it's just a good champion that most junglers can play. Viego is a champion that people were saying is going to fall out of favor because they received a couple of nerfs, but I think it's obvious that if you can get them into a team composition that has a lot of damage and can get them a couple of resets, like Viego is still extremely strong. The passive is just completely out of this world. Jarvan is a champion that I hope we don't see Canyon on. Even though Jarvan has an 8 and 7 win rate on Jarvan, it is not the type of champion that is going to play towards Canyon's strengths. I think that Canyon is more than capable of playing the Jarvan and can do it, but it just puts additional pressure on the draft that I don't want to see Damwon doing, because there is a world where like they get red side, they leave open like Kiana or something, right? And they go, Mad Lions gets Kiana, first pick overall, blue side. Then Damwon does something like Jarvan plus TF, right? And then you go back and they take Graves, Lucian, or Jace in the top lane just to play into that champion pool. And then you have Damwon pick something to go head to head with that in lane. So they could either pick the Graves, Lucian, or Jace, one of the remaining champions, or theoretically play a tank. We haven't seen a lot of that, but I know that Khan is capable of doing that, has those champions in their pool, and they did pull out the Ornn at MSI, so that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. That would force them to also play a hyper carry in the bot lane. So maybe we get something like an Aphelios out of Ghost and Beryl. And although they've played a bunch of different types of champions at Worlds, I still do think of them as utility players, and I don't want them to be the focal point of a team composition for Damwon, even though I think that they can win that way. You're just not playing towards your strengths as a team, in my opinion. So that would potentially be like a very low damage composition that not only is it a low damage composition, but now you have to deal with like a Kiana, you have to deal with disadvantageous matchups potentially in top lane, and then the slower side of bot lane. So there are definitely drafts that I can imagine that Jarvan would be a big trap for them, and they don't need to play it. They can play a bunch of these other champions. So then Xin Zhao, really good champion. I am somewhat surprised that it has a negative win rate at 40. Well, not negative, but below 50% win rate, just because it's a very good champion. I think that there's probably like you can probably attribute some of that to lesser teams being more likely to take it, or more bad teams took it, or more underdogs took it. That would be my initial assumption. Kiana has looked very strong at Worlds. I know that like the Poppy tech is really good, but you could do something like draft Poppy and Kiana 1-2 on red side, and then I'm not sure what else teams really want to do to go against the Kiana. That'd be kind of cool, because you could still play Poppy support or top, or theoretically you could give Kiana to like Showmaker or something, but that's less likely. Talon, I definitely prefer Kiana to Talon. Talon does do a lot of damage, but I don't think that they offer enough utility. Like, that's the great thing about Kiana. Not only can she assassinate, and she's also very slippery, but at the end of the day, you hit one good ultimate, and it can completely change the entire game, even when you're losing. So that's a champion I would like to see kind of Damwon building drafts around or trying to get it, because then you're putting a lot of pressure on Mad Lions. Like, if Damwon wins the early game and Mad Lions has to contest a dragon or a baron, walks towards Damwon Kia, who's already set up around the objective, and then you get a Kiana ultimate into a wall, hits 2 or 3 people, that's just probably going to be a one team fight. So it's just very difficult for the other team to play around, and I think that's probably what we're going to see, because as time goes on, people play a little tighter. They want to play around the easily projected like, not breakpoints, but times of the game where there's a dragon coming up in 2 minutes. We're going to play around that dragon. There's a Rift Herald coming up at the 8-minute mark. We're going to play around that. There's a Baron coming up at 20 minutes. Maybe we can't take it on spawn, but we'll start trying to get vision for it around spawn. And then hopefully sometime between the 23 to 25-minute mark, we can force a Baron fight and turn that into a winnable lead, a lead large enough to win the game. Then let's just keep going through the champions. Poppy's been a really good tech. That helps Damwon a lot from a drafting perspective, because theoretically you might want to consider banning it 4-5 if they don't show who their jungler is yet, and if you think it really is a big problem when up against like a Kiana, Jarvan, Viego, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao. Like, all these champions have dashes. Like, that's one of the reasons why Poppy's so powerful right now. The Gale Force 80 carries, Lucian with a dash, Ezreal, Sylas, just a lot of champions with dashes. Even like Leona, like when she tries to pull herself in. Olaf, I don't think we'll see Olaf, but we definitely could, especially if Elyoya tries to play like an AP champion, just to like try to steamroll the early game, like something against Lilia or something like that. I don't think that we'll see that, but it's possible. Then we have Graves, who showed up twice in the jungle. I think that's probably more the reason why it's 0-2 is probably has more to do with the teams that were playing it. Let's see. I would assume that it was like picked as a flex and then they didn't flex it, or it was picked as a flex and then they were forced to put it into the jungle. So Blabber and Bwipo. So Blabber probably had it in a tough matchup, and then I know that Bwipo had it in a bad matchup, just because their team was in a bad matchup in every game that they played. Sejuani, I hope that we don't see Canyon on that. Shaco, that was just the Detonation Focus Me special. And then Talia. Canyon plays Talia, but I don't think that we're going to see it. So since we have like an understanding of the jungle champions that are pretty strong, and why they're used in different team compositions, and we know that, well, I think that I know that Canyon is the best jungler left in the tournament. So we can kind of compare Canyon to the remaining junglers, right? So Canyon against Wei. Canyon is better than Wei. Wei played a lot of Jarvan last year, and that it's not necessarily like, oh, they're not good, they play Jarvan, but that seems like the kind of thing that RNG could easily trap themselves into in drafts. I do think that Wei had some good performances when they were winning a lot of their games against lesser LPL teams on carry champions. So it's not that I don't think that they can do it. It's just I don't think that they would do it at a similar rate against a player like Canyon, and in a matchup against Damwon. So I think that Wei, even though stylistically they probably do share enough of a champion pool with Canyon where you can think of them as somewhat similar junglers. From that perspective, I don't think that from a talent, if we're just looking at talent, I just don't think they're on the same level. Same thing with Jai Jai. Jai Jai was even pulled during playoffs for Junjia at one point, so that's never a good sign. Clid, I think that Clid is a very good jungler. I think that like they're probably in this tier, and I think a lot of the junglers that are left are very similar in terms of ability, like their skill level, their talent level. Um, Blabber, I think that Blabber is another player who's similar to Canyon in terms of champion pool, and is a true. He's more of like a Tarzan Clid kind of player because they didn't have a great time in the true carry meta, the farming carry meta. Blabber is more of like an old school League of Legends player in that sense, even though he's younger. Like the amount of games that he has on the other types of champions, that's really where he creates his best advantages. So in a matchup against Clid, you could have two junglers playing more of an old school style, which would potentially be a benefit for C9. But at the same time, I think that would be a negative in the mid lane for Perks because I think that he's more of a counter meta player. Like he can play a lot of the classic champions, but I think that BDD would have a big edge over them in that scenario. And then we can go to the next one. So Owner and Willer. So Owner and Willer are a little bit more difficult for me to get a handle on. Like, I think that they have both shown good upside, but they're more of question marks because we haven't seen as much of them at the professional level. So this tournament will probably play a large role in determining how good people think that they are. I feel, let's see. I know that Warner had some really good performances. So the Jarvan game, that's just a drafting thing. They're capable of playing other champions. They played the Poppy, so again, they have a bunch of different champions that they can pull out, and they're willing to adapt to the meta. They have the Kiana game that's important for the rest of the tournament. So like, we can't give them a demerit for that. It's more of a question mark because of the amount of tape that we've seen from them. The Talon game was really good. It was like a stomp, but it wasn't. It was like still good. Like it didn't look bad, right? So, Wonder against Jai Jai. So Xin Zhao against the J4. I prefer this side. I hate this Ziggs. I don't like this team composition overall. Pretty difficult to engage. Like Xin Zhao's being asked to be the primary engage with like Shen on his back. Like I don't think we really want to do that. And I don't think that T1 would do that again. Actually, they would, because T1 is insane in that way. They have some of the weirdest team compositions. So another Poppy. So that makes them a little bit more draft dependent. Like I do think that I prefer the T1 side. I think from a betting perspective, HLE does make a lot of sense because nobody's going to be on them. But in regards to like who is more likely to win, I do think it's obviously T1. So there's that. And then in the last match we have Elyoya. So Elyoya is another player. He really did his best in the other kind of carry meta. I'm not convinced that Elyoya is like an elite jungler. I know that some people want to give him the credit for being an elite jungler, but the only stuff that we've seen from Elyoya is, well, the only stuff that I've really seen from Elyoya is good carry performances on a good team in a region that is overvalued. So if I think, and I do, that the LEC is overvalued in general, those wins against that level of competition is not as impressive. Now, obviously, they did a good job at MSI, so we can take a look at that real quick and see what junglers they were playing against Canyon. Yeah. So the Udyr meta, I mean, Udyr, Volibear. It was just a fundamentally different meta. The types of champions are just very different. Yeah. So a bunch of Udyr games. Um, this is one of the reasons why I think that Damwon has a huge edge. I mean, the last time that we saw these teams play against each other, it was in a meta that was much more difficult for junglers to differentiate or distinguish themselves from other junglers in matchups. Uh, and because even during this meta, you would see players like Peanut be able to create larger advantages because of the types of champions they were playing in drafts, and it would be like a stylistic mismatch where it's like a Volibear or an Udyr or something against a true like carry champion like Nidalee or something like that. Um, mm, 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 mm. Sorry, I got distracted. Um, but yeah, so it's fundamentally different. I think that giving Mad Lions too much credit for keeping games close and winning games against Damwon Kia in this meta, it's not going to look the same. Um, it's just such a bad matchup. It's just such a bad matchup for Mad Lions. I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening. Unless they get like the performance of a lifetime out of Carzzy and Kaiser, because top lane, I think that Khan can do everything that Armut does at a higher level. I think Canyon's just a better version of Elyoya. Showmaker is a better version of Humanoid, and then also has other play styles that are just better. And then Ghost and Beryl have been doing a surprisingly good job at Worlds, picking up different types of champions. Not that I questioned whether or not they could play them, but it's just, is your team going to play around you instead of playing around Showmaker or playing around Canyon? Are they going to rely on you to be the winning difference? And I don't think that they should do that. But getting back to the jungle, I really think that a lot of these junglers down here are kind of replaceable outside of Canyon. I think that any of these junglers up against Canyon is just at a disadvantage because it doesn't matter what type of champion they play. Canyon can play the other side of the matchup better than they can, and can create advantages in every single matchup. I would say that if you're looking at the jungle and you want Damwon to like leave the door open, then you would really need Damwon to place a high priority on like Poppy, Trundle, Jarvan, and then just not drafting enough damage in their team compositions. I don't think it's going to be. I can't imagine a scenario where Canyon loses Damwon a series because of mechanical ability, jungle pathing, decision making. It would have to be, wow, these drafts are horrible. They don't have enough damage to function as a team. Puts ridiculous pressure on Canyon to go from lane to lane and try to get them back into the game. That's what I would be concerned with. And then the other thing I'd be concerned with is, does Damwon put themselves into spots in drafts where they don't have great engage options and they are forced to team fight Mad Lions around Dragon, around Baron? Not because I think that Mad Lions is a better team fighting team than Damwon, which I don't. I just think that when you get into those predictable spots, it gives Mad Lions the opportunity to like have crazy plays that even though they win it 20% of the time, if they win a couple 20% of the time fights in this matchup, it can kind of turn a series on its head. That's really it. So I mean, I don't think that there will be. I'd be interested to hear other people's opinions on the jungle. I don't think that we should really want to give many of the other junglers that much credit because what we've seen at Worlds, they just don't deserve it. But again, if you have a different opinion, let me know why you have a different opinion in the comment section. But that's all I've got for you in this video. I'm also going to do a mid lane video like this and a bot lane video. Those should both be out sometime tomorrow or Thursday. The games start back up on Friday. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.